Live. All right. Hey, everybody. It's Andee Graves, and I'm back with you today. We are working on these fun motifs, and today I'm going to show you how to do round 2 and 3 and the start of round 4. And then next time on the 31st of March, we're going to be getting together, and I'm going to show you how to do the join as you go to join all your motifs together to create your fun project, whether it's a wrap like I made or any other fun things. So I wanted to change up the last time you saw me, I made the centers out of the white, and it was kind of hard to see with my white hook. So today I changed to a yellow, and this is the fun stitch chart that's available on my blog, or you can see it, you can buy the pattern as a PDF on Ravelry.com. So I'm going to move that out of our way, and we're going to begin with our little center here. And I'm working with a bulky yarn. This is the Barocco Ultra Wool Chunky that we have here in the shop, and it is a great one. And it doesn't really matter which stitch. A little quick thing here. You can see where I ended the round, and that was a slip knot that closed that up. And when you're working your stitches, you're going to work into each of these stitches, and the weird one is going to be this chain 3. So when we get to that, I'm going to show you little tricks I do. I also have this tail that's hanging out here, and I'm going to work over the tail for a couple of stitches. So what I tend to do is start opposite of where I ended my last motif. I insert my hook. Now, a lot of people will tell you to attach the new color yarn with a slip stitch, which you can do. It just gives a few more knots in there, and I prefer to avoid having knots in my work. My tail's a little long here. I'm going to shorten it a tiny bit. And then what I'm going to do is just start my chain. So the beginning of this round of cluster stitches, as you can see on our chart here, is we have a chain 2 and then a 2 double crochet cluster begins the first one, so that it looks similar to the other clusters in the round that are 3 double crochet clusters. So I'm going to chain 2, yarn over, insert my hook, and when I do this, I make sure that I catch that tail in the bottom of the stitch that my first stitch I'm making. So then I yarn over again, insert, pull up a loop, pull through 2 loops, and then go through those last 3 loops, and I've made my first stitch. Now you'll see that you've got kind of little funny things happening here, but the nice thing is with that looser join, I can adjust that a bit. Then I'm going to chain 3. I'm going to go to the next stitch, and I'm going to make a 3 double crochet clusters. So yarn over, insert again, pull up a loop, go through 2. I need to pull out some yarn here. Yarn over again, insert the hook, pull up a loop, pull through 2 loops. I've got 4 loops left on the hook, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through that. Hang on a second here. I'm going to adjust this camera just a tiny, tiny bit so we can look down at the work a little more. There we go. Now we're going to chain 2, and this is one of the things to keep track when you are working this round, is that you alternate the chain 3s and the chain 2s between our cluster stitches, because that gives us the hexagon shape that is an important part of this round and an important part of the overall motif. Now I've gotten close to where my yarn tail is. I'm going to fold it over the top of these stitches, and I'm going to work these next 2 clusters over that tail. This is going to help me later when I need to weave that tail in. It's already been partially secured. So another cluster, and now we're going to chain 2 and another cluster. One of the tricks when doing this round in a different color is it's very easy to lose track of which is the stitch to work into when you get to where the join of round 1 was. As you can see, this looks kind of a jumbled mess here with this chain stitch, but we're going to work a stitch into here. And as we work the stitch into here, sometimes it can shrink up the top of that next stitch. So you just want to make sure to count that your stitches are the right number and that you've gotten everybody in the right place. So I'm going to work this next cluster. And once I've finished it, I'm going to chain, and now I have to look. Yep, chain 2. And now this is the stitch that likes to disappear sometimes. You can see how it looks like I want to go to this stitch. And it's this stitch instead. It's like, so you need to kind of finagle your way into that loop to make sure you don't miss that stitch. So we're going to complete it into that stitch. And we've got 3. And now we're going to chain 3. I'll double check that. So I've got to chain 3, chain 2, chain 3. Now we're going to come into here. And we're going to continue on this way all the way around. And we get done with this point, I'll show you what we have. We have a tangle, that's what we have. So now we've gotten around to almost the end of the round. And we're going to chain 2, do another cluster. And these clusters are forming the petals of our flowers. And we got a last chain 3 and then our last cluster stitch. And, ooh, I'm running out of yarn. There we go. And we're going to chain 2. Now we're going to connect with a slip stitch, and we want to connect to the top of the first cluster stitch we made. So we're basically skipping that chain 2 and fastening to here, and I'm going to pull that on through. And you can see, once that's finished, that we've got this nice hexagonal shape happening. So each of these corners are the chain 3s and the interiors are the chain 2s. So now we finished round 2. Next, we're going to start round 3, and I'm going to switch colors here. Now round 3 is the one round that we work going in the opposite direction. And if you can see on the stitch chart here, we change direction because if I turn and go this way, I'm in the middle of all this. So instead, I chain 1 and turn, and I work this third round going this way. When you're doing a change of color, you don't necessarily have to work it that way. But one of the nice things about turning in rounds is that your joins become straighter and your overall stitch work sits more squarely together than if you work continuously in rounds. In crochet, when you work continuously in rounds, your work will bias in one direction or the other depending on if you're right-handed or left-handed. So this is the right side of my work. I'm going to turn it over so that the wrong side is facing me. And to join my yarn, if I go from the back to the front, I end up with a tail sticking out in the front on the right side of the work that I don't want there. So instead, I do a little convoluted thing. I bring my hook from the front to the back and pull my yarn up so I have a loop here. Again, I don't do a slip stitch to join. You can if you prefer. And I make a chain stitch and then flip the tail so it's underneath and make my first single crochet stitch. Now that I've got that set up, give the tail a little pull to make sure everybody's snug. And now I'm going to do this first point on our chart here. So it's going to be 3 double crochets into the chain 3 space, and then a chain 1 and 3 more double crochets in that same space. That chain 1 gives us the point that we're going to work our more exaggerated points in round 4. So I've got the 3. And the nice thing about this is that this color then begins to cover up the chain spaces between our petals, and that helps our petals stick out more. Whoops, I started to do a double crochet. Then I'm going to do a single crochet into the chain 2 space and skip to our next chain 3 space and do 3 doubles, chain 1, and another 3 doubles. And we're going to continue like this around. And so once we get there, I'm going to stop with this one. Get this little guy. So this one is almost finished, and you can see how I've got an almost rounded shape from the doubles with the chain 1 space. And whoops, hold on, pulled my yarn through the wrong way and I've got a little snafu here. Let's see. You know, crochet is all about making knots with a hook, but sometimes you get some knots you don't want. All right. So now I'm ready to do my very last. I'm going to do, whoops, splitting my yarn. So I'm going to do my, let's get this guy out of our way. So I'm going to work 3 doubles. And then chain 1, 3 doubles. Now I've reached the end of this round and I need to join to the beginning of my round once I finished off these last double crochets. So I'm going to join with a slip stitch into that first single crochet of the round. Oops, get this through here softer. And now that I've got that done, I'm going to chain 1 and I'm going to turn, and we are now at the beginning of round 4. So round 4, round 1, round 2, and round 4 all worked in the same direction, which is the right side of our work. So we're going to now work a single crochet in each double crochet up till we reach the chain 1. And then in the chain 1, we're going to do a single crochet, chain 2, a single crochet, and then single crochet in each double crochet. And we're going to skip the single crochet that anchored in the chain 2 space in round 3. So we're not going to work in this stitch at all. We're going to skip to the next double crochet. So now we're going to go and chain 2, and we're just going to continue this way. And I'm going to do one more so you can kind of see how this shapes up. So we're getting these nice sharp points now instead of those curves that we had before to create the petals of our flower. And my petals are gray for this demonstration. And when we get to the end here, we're going to do a different kind of join. So instead of doing a slip stitch to the first stitch, which is how it's shown on the chart here, we have a slip stitch to the first stitch to end the round. And you can do that, that's fine, but you will get a little bit of a knot there if you do that. So one of my favorite things to do is do an invisible join. And there's two ways you can do that. When you get to the last stitch, you fasten off your yarn and pull that loop up through the stitch. In fact, I should probably demonstrate that just so it's easier to see sometimes than to be told. Unpick this and get back over here. There it is. Okay. So I'm going to go into that last stitch, make a single crochet. Now, if I was going to slip stitch, I would go into this first stitch, pull that through, pull through this loop, and tighten it up. But instead, I fastened off my yarn, and now I'm just going to pull this loop through until the end pops out. So the stitch is kind of loosey-goosey right now, but that's going to be fixed. Then I'm going to take my darning needle or tapestry needle, whatever, depending on the size of yarn you're working with. I'm going to thread it. Now I have two options. I can just come over here, go under that first stitch, bring the needle up and back down through this stitch towards the back. See how it's going in there? And pull that up and make it nice and snug. And you can see that you have a little mini closure. It's not quite as invisible as another method here, which I'll show you. And in this method, put the yarn on the needle again, and we're going to go a little further along. Instead of going around this stitch, we're going to come all the way up here, go through there, and you're going to create basically a duplicate stitch. You're going to come back around, slide in through the back, down through this stitch, and then you snug it, and it's basically created a new top to that stitch, and it's very difficult to see where that round was joined, and you get a nice smooth look. You're going to need this even when we join our motifs together into fabric, because as you can see on the wrap here, you still have the sides of your motifs are very visible. So when you have a nice, clean, invisible join like this, you're not going to see that. And then you're going to weave in your tail, and you're all done with your motif. Now, if you're going to do join as you go, you want to work rounds 1, 2, 3, and all of round 4 for your first motif. But after your first motif, you're going to start joining to corners of the other motifs to join together into a fabric like I did on this wrap. So for next time we get together on the 31st, I'm going to show you how to join your motifs together in round 4, because we modify the look of our pattern a little bit for that aspect of it. If you've got any questions, you can email me through the shop, and I will try to answer them, but or you can put the questions in the discussion on Facebook, and we'll be there to help you out. Thanks so much for joining us today.